everyone, Ace here, and today I want to discuss the issue of the Trump conference regarding video game violence that occurred earlier today, and some of the results of that. Unfortunately, this conference was closed to the press, so we are unable to actually watch any footage from it, and therefore the only information we have regarding what actually happened is the people that were actually there. So let's dive in. Now, going into this, I think it's safe to say that the president did have a certain degree of bias over his stance on video game violence and its effects, or lack thereof, on people as a whole. This was apparently demonstrated because one of the first things he did with the meeting was show a montage of various clips from violent video games, and then asking, "This is violent, isn't it?" to members of the conference. We also know that some of the people that were advocating against video game violence in video games suggested common sense video game legislation as well. On the other hand, the ESA appears to have maintained its stance that video games do not correlate with violence within society itself. Something else that was mentioned by most of the participants was that while the meeting itself was rather contentious, it was not outright hostile. There was actually some genuine debate and discussion going on within this conference. Something else that should be mentioned is that there doesn't appear to be any action being taken because of this conference specifically. So, you might be wondering, what are my thoughts overall on this whole meeting? Well, to start off, I would argue that this seems more like a fact-finding mission than anything from Trump. It is quite demonstrable and true that he does indeed have a bias against violent media in general, not just games, but movies as well. However, it does seem quite clear that he was willing to listen to both sides of this specific conference, which is a good sign overall. I would say that, as I mentioned before, this is a fact-finding hunt of his, trying to figure out what's the underlying cause to the violence issue within the US as a whole. And while I am in complete disagreement with the notion that violent video games are the underlying cause, especially when compared to the rest of the world as a whole having violent video games, but not necessarily having the same problems in general as the United States, I still can understand why someone that is more hesitant about this notion could actually decide to look into it, as well as other matters as a whole. After all, he's not specifically focusing on video games in particular, as he's also looking at gun control as well as other measures as well. And while I don't exactly agree with those ideas either as being the solution to this whole matter, I can at least see why he's trying to look into those as well. Ultimately, I believe that the ESA should be cautious and careful, but at the same time be ultimately willing to cooperate and be cordial in their discussions with the president. They should not take outright hostility towards him, however they shouldn't be afraid to point out when he's wrong, why he is wrong. To my fellow gamers, while I do say that we should keep our eyes peeled on this subject matter, I don't think this is something that we need to necessarily panic about as of yet. I do believe that the ESA can actually convince Trump that video games are not the underlying causes to the violence crisis within the US. Overall, there's not that much to actually talk about with this specific meeting. As I mentioned, nothing has actually been done about it. But if there is more news about it, I will of course keep you guys updated. Until then, hope to see you guys again soon. Take care. Ace out.